As I've travelled around the diocese this past year, I've been reminded of one of the great paradoxes of our faith. As Christians, we follow the example of Jesus Christ by setting time aside to study, to reflect, and above all, to pray. This drawing aside for a while is a fundamental part of our lives as God's people. Quiet times, personal prayer at home or at church or on a walk out in the countryside, or reading the Bible all give us the space to go deeper into God. Jesus Christ himself did just that. He spent 40 days in the wilderness praying and fasting before the start of his public ministry. And of course, in St Mark's account of the Transfiguration, we read that after 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James and John with him and led them up to a high mountain where they were all alone. In the final verse of the wonderful hymn of the Transfiguration, Joseph Armitage Robinson penned the following: "'Tis good, Lord, to be here, yet we may not remain. But since thou bidst us leave the mount, come with us to the plain." Since thou bidst us leave the mount. The paradox I referred to earlier is that prayer may well take us aside for a while to enjoy, as it were, a hilltop experience where we can stand back and survey the landscape. But then it draws us back down to the plain, to the place where Christ meets the world, to the joys and challenges of being his disciples in all the complexity and the frenetic busyness of the communities of which we're a part. If we simply want to stay on the Mount of Transfiguration, we would be avoiding reality. Times of withdrawal are there for us to feed and to be strengthened for our mission and ministry back in the world. And so Christian prayer, rather than removing us from the world, immerses us ever more fully in it. As we begin the third year of living God's love, I'm still clear that it's not my role to specify how we work out our diocesan vision in every different community which makes up our vast diocese. There's no one way of going deeper into God. There's no universal method or practice which will lead us unfailingly nearer to God. How could it be otherwise? We're individuals, made in the image of God, certainly, but each distinct and unique. In this diocese, in common with the rest of Christendom, there are many examples of churches, chaplaincies, and even our church schools where people are discovering different ways of going deeper into God. There's a vast richness of experience available to us, and it's my hope and prayer that as our vision for living God's love takes root and guides us, we will share what we've been learning with each other. I should like to tell you about 3 examples of work currently being done in the diocese, which demonstrates the diversity and creativity that we can benefit from. So we travel southward to Barnet, where Canon Hall Spears is working with Cassio. I asked him to summarise what it is and what it does. So tell us what Cassio is.
Cassio is a lay-led movement in the Church, helping people to deepen their faith in their daily living.
And what do you actually do when you join Cassio?
One doesn't join as such, one comes to a weekend, an intensive weekend, one has to say, exploring the faith, sharing together, and it's a moment for renewal and having fun. That's terribly important in Cassio.
So it's just a weekend?
After the weekend, each person is then encouraged to join a small group, meeting regularly to share their experience in 3 aspects. First of all, to share their experience as to what brought them closest to Christ since they last met.
It sounds strange, but I wanted to see the source of the River Thames, which is nearby. Anyway, we got there, it's dried up, nothing.
Oh no!
It was just a sort of indentation in the earth, and a pile of stones where, you know, it should have been.
Really?
But that was a sort of disappointment. So then we thought, we're going to see it. So we got in the car again and drove a little way down the road, and there was a village where the infant Thames was there, and it was about 10 feet wide. It's immensely moving, because I find God in nature is very, very special to me, very powerful.
Then the rather grandly termed study, but that can be anything, sharing the experience of a film that had a message or a conversation that really brought home to them what their faith means. And thirdly, and it's very much the third, action. What are they planning to do in their own community?
So how does Cursillo fit in with the ongoing life and worship of a typical Church of England parish?
There are many people in our churches who are lovely and good people for whom their experience of church is becoming more and more duty. This is to refresh them and bring joy into that experience and help them to witness, though that may be a word that is foreign to some of them, being so full of the light of their faith that they want to share it.
And what can other parishes learn from Cursillo, even those who aren't at this stage wanting to be part of it?
I think having groups that steer away from church politics, restoration funds and all the daily difficulties of parishes and concentrate on simply what brings them closer to Jesus.
St Andrew's Chorleywood has a midweek programme for children and young people. Philippa Maddox, the children and families pastor, explains what they do.
We run some after-school clubs for different age groups, and one of those is actually in a local primary school. We also have 3 toddler groups that we liaise with, and we link with other churches to run bigger events less frequently, including a fantastic holiday activity week in the summer.
So what's the difference between the work that you're doing in St Andrews and another youth group or a secular children's activity?
Some of what we do could look very similar. I think what makes it different is the reason why we do it. And that is all about God. It's about introducing the children to God, helping them to learn more about Him and develop their relationship with Him. But also to do that in a way that's fun and creative, so that they don't think that church is boring, they come and have fun. Okay, right, so can you remember what we've been learning about in space the last few weeks? Yes, Holly?
It's not fair, it's fair.
Yes, we've been learning about being fair, that's right, because we tried some fair trade chocolate, I think we all remember that one. Yes. And what else have we been learning about? Do you remember Jesus took some of his followers on a special... What? You remembered? No, you hurt yourself. Where did Jesus take some of his followers to teach them some special stuff?
On a hill.
On a hill, that's right. Exactly. Today we've got the next one, which is, blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. So we've been learning all about what mercy is. Who thinks they can explain what mercy is? Yes, Nathan.
Now, I know that many people hearing talk about how different youth culture and children's culture is today don't even know where to begin. What would you say to them?
I don't think it's that different. I think that young people want what they've always wanted, which is to be listened to and be loved, and anybody can do that.
Now, what do the children and young people themselves say about the events they come to?
They have fun. They get a bit rowdy sometimes because they can get overexcited, and their parents often say to us how much they enjoy it, and we can tell that they love it because they come back week after week. Many of them never miss a session.
And do you have an example of how the work at St Andrews has led a younger person to a deeper commitment?
We had a lovely youth baptismal service a few months ago, and a couple of the teenagers talked about how they had experienced God for the first time during some of the children's groups when they'd been a bit younger. That was important on their journey to personal faith.
Rachel, who are you working with in your children's work at St Andrews?
We're working both with the children of church family members who come regularly, and we're also seeking to provide activities that children more widely from the village and local schools will want to come to.
Now, some churches struggle to keep children during their teenage years. What's your experience?
We're really keen to make children feel welcome and involved, both in activities that are clearly designed for them to have fun and learn more about God in their own age groups, but also crucially in the wider church life and services as well.
And how do you make that a reality?
Well, for example, once a month in the morning we have a short all-age service where we're keen to involve children and young people up front as part of the service leading, and to have a whole variety of different activities and styles of worship in the service that engage people of all ages, including our children and young people.
In the north of the diocese, in Sharnbrook Deanery, the Reverend Tom Sander has made use of Compline. Tom, tell us what the service of Compline is.
The service of Compline is a very short service that usually happens at the end of the day, typically said just before going to bed. The Lord Almighty grant us a quiet night and a perfect end. Amen. It has its origins in the monastic orders of Western Christendom, but recently in Sharnbrook we've been using it in the parish, being said daily during Advent and Lent.
Now, for a lot of churches, trying to encourage people to come to church, we think about making it more friendly, more relevant, more exciting. Why do you get all these people turning up every night at 8 o'clock to a quiet candlelit service where they don't even have to talk to each other?
Well, we weren't quite sure to start with, and certainly we were surprised by it. But thinking about it, Compline offers people a real opportunity to gather together and to become mindful of the presence of God without the need to interact with other people. If you think how intimidating it is walking into a church for the first time, you come in the door and you're greeted by a group of people, conversations are going on all around you, you get handed a load of books, you don't know where to sit, half the church is full, what do you say? All these things are a barrier, whereas Compline in Sharnbrook, it's candlelit, people can come in the door, pick up their book and their candle and sit anywhere in the nave, and that's their space and their space to commune with God.
What have you learned from this experience?
We've learnt that it's not always about providing a powerful and outgoing welcome to people. Sometimes it's just about offering people a place to come and pray. Prayer is really central to the mission of the church, we feel. Without prayer, Christian faith becomes very dry and it can't survive, I don't think. So in trying to bring people into the life of the church, teaching them how to pray is one of the really most important things I think we can try and do.
In the short space of this DVD, we've seen 3 parishes which are taking seriously the call to go deeper into God. You too will have your own stories. Within the diocese, we have a huge repository of skill, of knowledge and enthusiasm for God's work. We've seen how deepening our own spiritual life is closely tied to the 2 other aims of living God's love, namely transforming communities and making new disciples. Prayer is at the heart of our lives in Christ, and in turn it takes us to the heart of the world as well, reminding us continually that our calling is to be ambassadors for Christ. At the beginning of this new year, may I invite you to consider 3 things. Firstly, ask yourselves, and ask your church, and most of all ask God, how we can respond to the call to go deeper into God in a way which is relevant and appropriate to the setting in which we live and work and have our leisure. Perhaps you can genuinely say that you're already doing this, in which case it's right and proper to celebrate the work. But where there is scope to offer something new or to develop what's already in place, please pray, reflect and act on it. Secondly, will you share what you're doing as a church, or what you plan to do, with the rest of us? The easiest way to do this is through your mission action plan, a summary of which will be made available on the Living God's Love website. By offering our practice and our experience to one another and through learning from what's being done elsewhere, we can all benefit. Thirdly, please recommit yourselves individually and corporately to continue your own journey deeper into God. We rightly plan and offer events, programmes and meetings in our efforts to draw others to faith and into discipleship, but we mustn't neglect our own spiritual lives in doing so. God provides us with generous and exciting opportunities to spend time in His presence. From such hilltops we're called again to the plains and to our work to bring to the world a glimpse of the kingdom of God. But there will always be another mountaintop experience awaiting us as we journey in His name. I look forward to travelling along with you over the coming year.